Do you want to play Crash Team Racing on PC? Well, too bad, because it's not on PC and this game is not Crash Team Racing. But we're going to talk a lot about the Karters 2 today. Hello gamers and welcome. I'm Dashy, and I would consider myself a bit of an aficionado of racing games, as you can tell by the gameplay on the screen right now. Nah, but really, I'm sure you could take a quick look at my channel and see that I've played a ton of Crash Team Racing, but beyond that I've played a ton of other racing games, between indie arcade racers, various simcades, and of course the big name kart racers. I have like over 1,000 hours in CTR, and my second most played racing game is probably Trackmania. Aside from those two, I've spent countless hours between a bunch of other racing games, with a large chunk of those hours spent digging into the game's systems to try to figure out what the deeper mechanics in those games are. The difference between a game that I'll play for a few hours and probably never touch again, and a game that'll suck me into a black hole where I'll look at the clock and realize I've been playing for 7 hours straight without noticing, has everything to do with the game having mechanics that are intuitive and easy to pick up, but take a lot of time to master and really maximize their usage, while still feeling rewarding while making progress with that mastery. I know, we're here to talk about the Karters 2 and whether you should play it, but I feel like a game's recommendation is only useful if you have an idea what the person giving the recommendation likes. I am a lowercase g gamer, with a Y, who loves grinding things like time trials and constantly improving for fun. I love going fast, and I love when games allow you to be creative with their systems. So, let's talk about the Karters 2. I'm going to split this up into a few parts. First, we'll go over how the game plays. Then we'll briefly talk about what it has to offer in terms of content. And then lastly, we'll round it off with some hang-ups that some people might have with the game. Before we get into it, I'll just straight up say, yeah, I do absolutely recommend this game. I'm not affiliated with the devs at all, and I'm not being paid or bribed into talking positively about this game, so everything here is my own genuine opinion. But currently the game is $24, and I personally feel like it's the best kart racer you can get on PC at this time. I also think that it can be one of, if not the, absolute most fun kart racing game for time trialing. I was invited to the closed beta about 2 years ago, and I enjoyed it a lot back then as well. Between the beta and now this early access, I've definitely already gotten my money's worth in terms of time played. And I know there's a lot of community content that can further expand that. The Karters 2 is a kart racing game that borrows DNA from a lot of other games. The one many people point to is Crash Team Racing, thanks to its 3-boost power slide system and the incentivization on continuously boosting. The game also has an in-air trick system, though it's more similar to Mario Kart than CTR's hang time boost. In CTR, when you start a drift with one of the jump buttons, a bar will start to fill up and you're meant to tap the other jump button the moment the bar reaches the top. This will produce a boost, and then the bar will start filling up a second time. This boost can be executed up to 3 times in a drift. And the speed that you gain from each boost in the chain will be stronger after each consecutive boost. That is a very surface level explanation of CTR's 3-boost system, which the Karters 2 is really similar to. The only real difference here is that in the Karters, if you're late on a boost and the gauge overfills, instead of the chain immediately ending like it does in CTR, the next bar will instead start to fill and you'll be able to execute the first boost late, although it's with a reduced effectiveness. The more important part of CTR's boost system is a hidden mechanic called reserves. In that game, doing mini turbos or hang time boosts will add to what is essentially a constantly draining fuel tank that will allow you to maintain your speed so long as you don't run out of reserves. Performing a bunch of mini turbos and then hitting a turbo pad, for instance, will allow you to keep the speed gained from that turbo pad. You can then do more mini turbos while you have that speed to continue to build reserves, allowing you to keep it going indefinitely. The only thing that will take that speed away is running out of reserves, hitting a wall, getting hit by an item, or braking on the ground without U-turning. In the Karters 2, however, there is a similar mechanic that has also been named reserves, though it doesn't really work the same. Here, there is a number with a percentage that at a baseline will be 100%. Performing full mini turbos and trick boosts will make this number increase, and whenever the number is above 100%, it will constantly be draining down. This percentage is referred to as reserves, though it would be more accurate to think of it like momentum. What it actually does is just straight up amplifies your speed. This is because the reserves and your actual speed are independent of each other. If, for instance, this number was locked to 100%, the game would play a lot like Mario Kart, where doing mini turbos, trick boosts, and hitting turbo pads would all give momentary bursts of speed. The reserves are just a speed multiplier, meaning that your base speed and momentary bursts of speed will be even faster. Another thing to note is that rubbing up against a wall will drain the reserves faster, but not always completely drop them down to 100. There's way more mechanics that I haven't even mentioned, but those things are what I'd consider to be fundamental to the game. Most importantly is that the 3-boost system is probably where I'd say the similarities to CTR kind of stop. Everything else is actually its own system, and trying to compare those systems to CTR is either reductive or just doesn't accurately present either system. Aside from the driving mechanics, the combat side of the Karters 2 is a little bit unique. First and foremost, the game features a health system, where items don't typically one-shot you, but when your health is depleted, you will tumble and your reserves drop to 100. As far as the items themselves, a lot of them are kind of straightforward and compared directly to other karting game items. The booster is basically a gold mushroom, the tank is like a bullet bill, portal gun is like a blue shell, Tesla gun is like a star, the hammer is kind of like the horn with its shockwave. There's even this missile that kind of feels like the chain chomp item from Double Dash, where like you launch it at someone and it follows them and then the missile drags you behind it. However, there is nothing that's kind of like a green shell or bowling bomb from CTR, which is kind of my issue with the items. Pretty much all the other items I haven't mentioned yet are just kind of a fire and forget kind of thing. They have a lock on, they do like 30% of someone's health. There's no real thought or skill to them. You just kind of see a reticle on somebody and hit the fire button, and that's kind of the extent of the whole thing. There's also not a lot in terms of defensive items, which is probably partially just because of the health system in general, meaning you don't need as many defensive items. There is a shield that lasts like a limited time and it'll block a few hits while the shield is active. There's a healing bot which will heal you for less health than what a single item will do. Though while it is healing you, you are invulnerable, so you can use it to kind of stay at 1 HP if something was going to kill you. However, there is one item that I absolutely adore, and that is the teleporter, which allows you to become intangible and leap forward. This lets you both dodge items and take shortcuts or cut corners you otherwise might not have been able to. This item is actually really fun to use and has tons of creative uses. I genuinely love this item. But to be frank, I'm not in love with the item system in the game, so I don't have a lot more to say about it. I won't claim to be like an expert on how the things work, because the majority of my time I've just been playing the time trials in the game. But I feel like the feedback on a lot of the items in general is just not super great in both the receiving and giving end. It's kind of hard to tell mid-race what's really happening in terms of the items, because you'll just kind of like see your health bar dropping and then you'll maybe see a few particles of an item fly past you, or you'll have an item that does damage and you'll shoot it at somebody and they'll just shrug it off, which makes sense because, you know, you didn't do enough damage to actually drop them to 0 health, but it just doesn't have much of feedback to it because it just seems like everybody just shrugs everything off until they don't. Others have said that they actually really like this system, so hey, your mileage may vary. You might end up really liking it. The last bullet point about the gameplay is that there are no stats tied to characters and karts, so everything is homogenized and all customization is purely cosmetic, putting everyone on an even playing field. But I think that sums up how the game plays. As far as what all content the game has to offer, there's honestly a decent amount even in just the base game. This is currently in early access, but from my understanding, the only stuff that'll really be added for a full release is an adventure mode, aside from like general overhauls of some of the systems that are there in the game right now that are kind of just being tested. But generally all of the content that's in the game at this time is what's kind of to be expected to be there for the full release. Right now there's 16 tracks and 6 battle arenas with a bunch of different modes, some of which are pretty unique. You've got your usual racing and time trial, but there's also a 2-player time trial, which I haven't touched at all, so I don't really know how it works, but I think it works like a kind of a relay system. You've also got an elimination mode where last place gets eliminated every lap, both with and without items. There's also 2 fresh game modes with Road Breakers, which is just hexagon finals from Fall Guys, where like you drive across some platform square things and it makes those things fall, and the whole idea is that you're supposed to be the last person standing. The other new game mode is called Quick Cut, and it's pretty interesting because it's like a point-to-point sprint race, but you pick up track pieces along the way, and you use those track pieces to kind of build your own shortcuts to get to the end faster. It's definitely a unique idea. The game also supports duos and team modes, and though I haven't really looked into them at all, they're absolutely a welcomed addition. The base game tracks are generally pretty fun to play on, albeit some need some small amount of polishing up. They all seem to flow really well and are tuned with the game's systems in mind, introducing ways to do small corner cuts with ramps once you've built up a lot of speed. There's also an interesting gate mechanic that's not in all of the tracks, but how it essentially works is that some shortcuts will start off with a gate blocking them, and as you progress to laps 2 and 3, the gates will go away, opening up the shortcuts. Though sometimes these gates are kind of just just a suggestion, and you can find ways around them. Of course, the big selling point is the community content support. There are a ton of community tracks ranging from ports or remakes from other games to completely original maps. You can even play on Dust 2 from Counter-Strike. At the present, there are 4 characters in the base game, but there are an insane amount of characters that people have modded in. Though I personally think the game's base content is pretty solid as it is, I can't just not bring up the modding support, because I know that's what truly is filling out the game in terms of content. So I guess this is where I'll talk about the possible hangups. I've kind of touched base on a few of them already, with like track polish and the item system not really being my thing, but there's kind of a really big elephant in the room that I think I should really address. And that is, the game is hard. Or more accurately, the skill floor of the game is pretty high, and the skill ceiling is basically infinite. If you're coming into this game with experience in CTR's boost system, it definitely lightens the load a little bit, but depending on how acclimated you were with holding fire and building reserves in that game, you may still struggle to actually build momentum in this game. Boosting poorly will actually net you less reserves than the amount that drained while you're performing those boosts, making it hard to actually stay above maybe 110%. That doesn't even touch on the fact that the majority of people that try out karting games never even engaged in CTR's mini-turbo systems, so their gameplay kinda usually looked like this. You could see this a lot with like game journalist gameplay, but you could also see it a lot when it came to anyone playing the game for the first time. Genuinely just didn't really understand how the mini-turbo system worked at all. And of course, the same thing happens in the Cars 2, where someone boots the game up, skips the tutorials, jumps straight into the race, and then just kind of assumes that the game's gonna play like Mario Kart, so their gameplay looks like this. And I've actually seen this already from a few other streamers that have tried out the game. I don't know what I'd do about this, I just know in my years of playing CTR and seeing online discourse about the difficulty of CTR NF, how people found engaging with the reserves mechanics to be too frustrating. Even when they learned how the reserve system worked, they kind of just decided that it was too frustrating to really actually apply, so they usually just ended up abandoning the game. Which makes me worried about this game, because in my eyes, this system is even more unforgiving, and in some cases, it's not super easy to understand without actually looking it up. The biggest issue for me personally, however, is one that I assume is probably going to get looked into and fixed in time, and that is that almost all of the tracks in the game have some big unintended cut that abuses track geometry in one way or another to skip parts of the track. And for a lot of these cuts, the setup is super finicky and overall not even really fun to perform. I actually had a bit of a minor crash out while time trialing one of the first tracks because I was having a lot of fun with the track until I had to implement a cut at the end that involves jumping out of bounds, jumping off of a rock, landing back inbounds, aiming for a small cannon, then hoping that I hit it at the right angle to propel me upwards to cut over the last corner of the track. Unfortunately, these kinds of cuts are in almost every single track, and overall I just find them to be frustrating to engage with. Just make the cart go around the fucking circuit, streamer, that's all you do! Come on, lock the fuck in! But all of this being said, yeah, I absolutely would recommend this game. I find it super fun. I personally love the mechanics of the game. I think that they're super rewarding and kind of fun to play around with in general. Genuinely, I consider the mechanics to feel kind of addicting to get good at, because a lot of it is just you build up speed and then you're rewarded for being creative in what you do with that speed. Usually it's just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna cut this corner a little bit harder now that I'm going a little bit faster, I can clear this kind of gap. But in general, just like, you end up going super fast by the end of a race, and there's just a lot of freedom of movement. Also, as much as it kind of breaks the game, I do genuinely love like how much you can just start flying in this game. It makes for a lot of funny moments. But all that being said, again, like I said, I would recommend this game. I've gotten plenty of time out of the game personally, and yeah, if you guys are interested in seeing any more content about the Karters 2 from me, let me know. I had a few other ideas, but I got the game a week ago, and it took me this long to put out this video. We all know the iTheDashy special of how long it takes for me to actually commit to a video, or if I actually ever commit to it. So yeah, feel free to let me know in the comments below. If you've already played the game, feel free to talk about, you know, how are your thoughts on the game, and do you think I adequately gave a description of the game, and if you are interested in the game, feel free to ask some questions. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Y'all mind if I'm... whatever the fuck is happening here?